Someone who grew up in an abusive type of situation as a child, or is used to being in abusive or toxic, unhealthy relationships, can develop into a person who tends to take blame upon themselves. So what we see is that there are some toxic people, such as narcissists, who they deal with things by taking what belongs to them and the responsibility that is theirs and shifting it off onto other people and blaming other people. So basically, they take their problems and their issues that belong to them and they put them on other people. So they manipulate other people to make other people feel guilty or feel ashamed about what they're doing, when really it's the toxic person who is behaving in a way that is out of line. Okay? So there's that side of things where people are toxic and don't accept responsibility and blame shift and put the blame on other people. But then there are those people who grew up maybe in that type of environment where they are exposed to that thing, and they've learned to take responsibility for things that aren't even their responsibility. So they've learned to take on all sorts of false guilt, all sorts of shame, all sorts of emotions from other people that don't belong to them. So they maybe other people around them are misbehaving, but they feel bad about themselves. They feel ashamed of themselves, like they've done something wrong, and they're way too quick to take responsibility, to doubt themselves, to question themselves, to wonder, what could I have done differently? What have I done wrong? So even when they're exposed to people who are toxic and acting in ways that are inappropriate, they may wonder, what could I do differently? What have I done wrong? They may have this heavy sense of guilt or shame, like things are bad because I'm not doing what I need to do. They question themselves a lot. And so when you see people who are used to being abused and manipulated, or have been in relationships where they were mistreated or exposed to toxic people, it's this perfect combination where the toxic person doesn't accept responsibility, shifts the blame on the other person, and then the abused person or the victim readily accepts blame and responsibility for things that don't belong to them. So when these type of people who have been victimized and abused, and who don't know how to distinguish and differentiate between what belongs to them and what belongs to those around them, and who just easily take on the weight and take on the self-doubt and the responsibility for what's going on, even when it shouldn't fall on their shoulders. These people, when they come and they are, nearly completely crushed under the load of all these burdens that they've been taking on themselves, blaming themselves for everything going on around them, for all the toxic stuff and the chaos and the negative emotions and things going on around them, and they take it all upon themselves. They blame themselves, they question themselves, they doubt themselves. They may have low self-esteem, low confidence in themselves, and they come and they look for help. And one thing that these people need, the first thing that these people need who have been abused like this, is not to be told to forgive. That is not the first step, because someone can't truly forgive if they don't even know that it's wrong for them to be mistreated in the first place. That is not these people oftentimes forgive too much. They're too forgiving. They're too used to overlooking the misbehavior of others. So this isn't their problem, and not what where we need to start with these folks. In fact, it can be harmful if these folks come to us who are being abused or victimized in this way, and we jump to you need to forgive, because they're already so likely to be overlooking misbehavior, and they've already learned that they're not deserving of being treated right. So, their mindset is it's okay for other people to treat me this way. They don't know how to stand up for themselves. They don't know how to distinguish between what belongs to them and what doesn't. They don't know how to say no. They're too nice. They're too forgiving. They're too willing to overlook misbehavior. So that's where it needs to start with these people. So these people need to be taught it's not okay for you to be treated like that. And here's why. God isn't happy with someone treating you this way, and it's not okay. It's not just. It's not right. And God's not happy with it. They need to know that. They need to know that for themselves. They need to know that about God, that God cares about people who are mistreated, that God is a God of justice. They need to learn about God in that way. And they also need to develop in themselves that sense of expecting to be treated in a certain way and not accepting certain behavior. So just please be mindful. I've seen a lot in the church where when people are hurt, the very first thing that's jumped to is forgiveness. And for some people that might be their first need, but there's a lot of people who they've forgiven too much. They've overlooked things too much in their life, and they've suffered because of it. And they need to be taught that it's not okay to be treated that way. They need to be taught how to stand up for themselves. They need to be taught how God really looks at that behavior, how to sort out what belongs to them and what doesn't, how to get that false guilt and shame that shouldn't have been on their shoulders on the first place, get that burden off of them, get that weight off of them so that they can truly be free. They need freedom from those things. That's where we need to start with those people. And so just please be mindful about giving a pat answer where, you hear about a believer being hurt and you just jump to forgive, because that may not be the place to start, especially with people who have been in abusive type situations.